in Biomedicine 2021. To those of you present here, to those that are watching us via streaming, thank you. The first person to use the floor is the Rector of the University of Lisbon, Professor Luís Ferreira. President of the Portuguese Republic, Professor Rebelo de Sousa, Minister of Health, Dr. Marta Temido, Mayor of Lisbon, Engineer Carlos Moedas, Secretary of State for Science, Technology, Higher Education, Professor Sergio Teixeira, Secretary of State for the Defense of the Consumer, President of the Education Committee of the Parliament, MP Alexandre Quintanilha, Professor Luís Portela, President of the BIAL Foundation, President of CRUP, Professor Antonio Sousa Pereira, ladies and gentlemen, presidents of various professional associations on the health field, members of the jury of BIAL Award in Biomedicine, members of the Academic Committee of the University of Lisbon, presidents, directors, awardee, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to say a few brief words. First, I'd like to welcome you to the University of Lisbon and to this noble hall that has witnessed important events in the history of the University of Lisbon, the Portuguese Academy, and of Portugal. I'd like to tell you how happy I am that this was the venue chosen by BIAL for this BIAL Award in Biomedicine 2021 ceremony. Awarding such an important award shows the recognition given to research and to the merit of those that being able to ask a relevant question on a concrete scientific question was able to use the appropriate means to obtain an answer, and it was intelligent, brave, and persistent enough as these works always demand. Let me congratulate from the outset the awardee and his collaborators. And a weight of greetings and congratulations to BIAL and to Dr. Luís Portela for their work and for the feeling of hope and accomplishment you have brought to Portugal. When we say that today we have the most educated generation in Portugal, how many companies like BIAL, they're investing in our researchers and in research? It is true that at the core of our concerns as a university there is education. But we always base education, as everything else we do, on the research we carry out, and we consider it to be the basis for our action. We are a research university, and we fight every day so that this research is useful for society. That is why we are so happy that we allow us to share with you the celebration of research, discovery, hope for a better world. Thank you, Mr. President, for your presence and for what it means. Thank you, Mr. Luís Portela. Thank you, BIAL. Thank you all. Now we will hear the President of the BIAL Foundation, Mr. Luís Portela. Mr. President of the Portuguese Republic, Your Excellency, Madam Minister for Health, Mayor of Lisbon, Rector of the University of Lisbon, Secretary of State for Trade, Services and Consumer Defense, Secretary of State for Science, Technology and Higher Education, Mr. Member of Parliament, President of the Council of Rectors of the Portuguese Universities, Presidents of the Associations of Doctors, Dentists, Psychologists and other representatives of professional associations, President of the APME, Director General for Health, President of Infarmed, and other representatives of the public administration, representative of the United States Embassy, President of the BIAL Foundation, presidents and other representatives of business associations, dear colleagues from the pharmaceutical industry, members of the jury of the BIAL Award in Biomedicine 2021, other authorities present here, dear awardees, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the BIAL Foundation is celebrating science that is carried out throughout the world on health. Celebration because we have a jury of excellence and chose to award a very high-quality scientific work that benefited mankind and can benefit it even more. This work led to the appearance of several vaccines that were an important contribution to minor the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. But it also opened the door to other innovative therapeutical solutions that may be developed. Celebration because we are awarding top scientists that are among those that best serve the health interests of people. BIAL Foundation, created in 1994, wants to support scientific development through research scholarships on neurosciences and psychology. In a rather discreet manner, we have supported so far 775 research projects developed in universities from 29 countries by over 1,500 researchers. The selection of the projects to be supported is made by our scientific council, made up of 55 scientists worldwide and chaired by Antonio De Maizo, a neuroscientist. In uneven years, we gather those fellows and scientists in a symposium we call Behind and Beyond the Brain. This symposium takes place in Oporto. The next one, on the theme Mystery of Time, will take place from the 6th to the 9th of April. But the most known activity of the Foundation is the awarding of 3 scientific awards on health. The BIAL Clinical Medicine Award on even years focused on valuing clinical research. The Maria de Souza Award every year, organized together with the Association of Doctors, addressed at young researchers on health sciences. And BIAL Award on Biomedicine in even years, on odd years, to award the best work on biomedicine in the past 10 years, and that is brought here today. Today's true celebration of science that we are having on health. We were able to gather an independent jury of top quality, presided by the neuroscientist Klaus Adolf from the Caltech, California Technical Institute, with 2 representatives from the European Research Council, Geneviève Almusni, director for the Research Center of Curie Institute in Paris, and Paola Bovolenta, head researcher at the Molecular Biology Center in the Autonomous University of Madrid. 2 representatives from the Council of Rectors of Portuguese Universities, researchers Maria do Carmo Fonseca, president of the Molecular Medicine Institute, University of Lisbon, and Fatima Carneiro from the Porto University. 2 representatives of the European Medical Association, Drs. Vincenzo Costigliola, president of the European Doctors Association, and Olga Golubnichacha from the Bonn University. 2 representatives of the Scientific Council of BIAL Foundation, Ugo Critchley, Psychiatry and Neuroscience Director at the Sussex University, and the neuroscientist Menno Vita from the University of Science and Technology in Trondheim. 2 former winners of BIAL Award, Peter St. John's Bishop from the Toronto University and Cambridge University, and Danielle Pipeliers from the University of Brussels. And finally, 2 representatives from scientific journals, Howard Bolchner, professor in pediatrics and public health in the Boston University and former editor of JAMA, and Eric Rammer, professor of immunology and infectious diseases from the University of Harvard and head editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. I'd like to thank Professor Ralph Adolphs and all members of the jury for the excellent and dedicated work they have done. And if you allow me, I would like to congratulate them for their choice. Professor Ralph Adolphs unfortunately could not be with us today, gave us the honor to accept chair the jury of the BIAL Award in Biomedicine in the next edition, 2023. Now, we are going to ask the invited institutions to appoint their new representatives. I'd like to thank the President of the Portuguese Republic, Professor Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, for his presence and the support he has always given us. Thank you, Mr. President. To the Council of Portuguese Universities, in its President, Professor Antonio Sousa Pereira, and to the Doctors Associations, in its President also Dr. Miguel Guimarães, I'd like to thank you for the support you have given to the BIAL Foundation. I'd also like to thank the Rectory of the University of Lisbon, its Rector, Professor Luís Ferreira, for the kind way how we were hosted here today. I'd like to thank the President of Madam Minister of Health, Marcelo Temido, the President of the Mayor of Lisbon, Engineer Carlos Moedas, Secretary of State for Trade Services and Consumer Defense, Mr. João Torres, and the Secretary of State for Science, Technology and Higher Education, Professor João Sobrinho Teixeira. And I thank all of you present here for being here with us in this party, in this celebration. A celebration that is a celebration of Professor Drew Weisser, the 36 members of this multidisciplinary and fantastic research team, but also the jury that chose this paper among the 47 that were appointed, and BIAL Foundation that started this initiative, and thank and celebrate those that benefit mankind with research work on health. Congratulations to the authors. Thank you for your excellent work. The BIAL Foundation would like to continue discreet supporting activity to health researchers and professionals in Portugal and across the world. We want to give an input so that under scientific method better conditions are given to human beings to get to know themselves better and to accomplish better individually and collectively in building a more balanced, harmonious and better world. Thank you for your attention. Now, the representative of the jury of the BIAL Award in Biomedicine 2021 will take the floor, Professor Manu Widar.
Excellency, members of the board of the BIAL Foundation, laureates, colleagues, and friends. It is an immense honor to stand here as the representative of the international jury for the BIAL Award in Biomedicine. This jury is composed of 13 members, and you just heard it in the speech of Dr. Luis Portello. The chair, Professor Rolf Adolphs, who unfortunately can't be here. And then there are 12 members forming 6 couples that each represents established international scientific organizations, and they were again already listed, but I want to repeat them because it shows the value of the prize and the relevance of the role of the jury. So the 6 couples represent the European Research Council, the Council of Rectors of Portuguese Universities, the European Medical Association, the Scientific Board of the BIAL Foundation, previous winners of the BIAL Award, and last but not least, 2 top scientific journals in the field of medical research, the Journal of the American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine. The BIAL Award in Medicine is intended to reward a work published in the last 10 years. It's of a biomedical nature which represents results of exceptional quality and scientific relevance. Nominations for the award are submitted by the members of the jury, by the members of the scientific board of the foundation, by previous winners of the BIAL Award, and by scientific societies. All major scientific societies in the world are invited to nominate awardees. This year, we, the members of the jury, were faced with the challenge to evaluate a large diversity of applications from 11 countries, 47 publications in total that spanned important work over the past 10 years in biomedicine, so published from 2012 onwards. Applications included basic research studies, clinical trials, work in neurodegenerative diseases, cancer, and infectious diseases. This is not an easy task, I can tell you. Comparing between apples and pears is not trivial, as you all know. But comparing over 40 types of fruits and finding a consensus about what is our favorite one took a serious amount of time. And you can see that as a result, we're lacking our chairman, and there's only 4 members of the jury present. So you can imagine that this was a tough struggle. We tried to weigh in all the factors that we agreed upon before we started. Factors that are indicators of the potential of the work, like that the paper must be an empirical, single work published in a peer-reviewed journal. The study should be a mechanistic biological study that shows a clear medical importance, either as part of the results or that importance is convincingly argued for in the discussion. It should be scientifically outstanding, and we agreed beforehand among us as members of the jury on how we would assess this. It would take way too much of your time to explain all of the details today, but I can assure you that the jury members spent their 1.5-day meeting in November last year very effectively, after all of us did serious homework before traveling to Porto to meet in person. The winning paper describes the complex work to engineer a messenger RNA vaccine to treat a disease and demonstrates its efficacy in mice and in monkeys. It is a tour de force of molecular biology aimed at human health and achieved the technological leap in messenger RNA vaccines aiming to act against the Zika pandemic, and that formed the basis for the vaccines currently administered to fight the COVID pandemic. It is notable that the paper was published in 2017, before COVID even existed. And it is written in a very humble tone that does not speculate about broader applications. However, we now have the evidence that this technology has enormous applications. Not only is it being used to successfully fight the COVID pandemic in countries around the world, but messenger RNA vaccines are being developed against many infectious diseases, from malaria to influenza, as well as non-infectious diseases such as cancer. We will learn more about that a little later in the presentation by the awardees. What all these diseases share in common is that they involve a fight of the immune system. Sometimes the immune system wins, and a person recovers, for example, from influenza. sometimes the immune system does not win and the person dies of malaria or COVID. Vaccination is one of the main tools doctors have available to help the immune system in its fight. Messenger RNA vaccines are safe, they are efficient, and can be engineered for many different diseases. Scientists can now quickly customize a messenger RNA vaccine against a new pathogen or against one that has mutated, as we have witnessed over the last 2 years with the COVID virus. However, not only must the genetic sequence of the messenger RNA be engineered specifically and precisely, it should avoid initial detection by the body's immune system. It also needs to get into the cells of the body. The immune system should not react to the messenger RNA itself, but to the specific protein that the messenger encodes for. The messenger RNA must be taken up by cells so that the body's own cells can produce amplified amounts of the target protein, such as the spike protein of the COVID virus. And that is what the immune system will be prepared to fight against. This engineering feat to produce nucleoside-modified messenger RNA that could be packaged to be taken up by cells, and a demonstration that it can indeed immunize against the pathogen in animal models, including primates, was the achievement of the winning paper. It is therefore that the jury reached the unanimous decision to select the work of Drew Weissman and his 36 co-authors, researchers from many academic and commercial institutions in many countries, published in the paper entitled Zika virus protection by a single low-dose nucleoside-modified messenger RNA vaccination, published in Nature in 2017. Aside from its impact, which has been referred to now several times, the paper is scholarly and beautifully written, and the team of scientists standing behind the paper is a perfect example of what academic diversity should mean. And it is therefore a great pleasure to congratulate on behalf of all the members of the jury, the representatives of this team, Dr. Drew Weissman and Michael Holden. Thank you very much.
Vamos agora conhecer a investigação que esteve na
We are
base
now
do artigo
going
premiado.
to know the research that was at the basis of the winner paper.
Contam como tudo começou.
Two of the authors, Professor Weissman, tell us how it happened.
That we are very different. I am talkative and bubbling, and Drew is more scientific. You are coming from A to B in a straight line, and I am A to B like that. You told me that. Yeah. But we try to go to the same place.
It's actually funny the way Katie and I met. Back in those days, the only way you could read journal articles is you had to photocopy them out of the journal. And we would fight over the copy machine to be able to read articles. And we started talking and comparing what each other did.
I was working with RNA, and I learned all of the immunology from you.
We started working on RNA to try and understand why it was so inflammatory. We were both completely open-minded. Any data that we didn't understand, and there was a lot of it, we sat down, we kept doing experiments, we kept getting results, we kept getting excited by the results.
Middle of the night, submitting grants, and 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, sending each other, and you are still up, and I am still up.
We couldn't have come to the result without both of us being involved.
I was making the RNA, and Drew was checking whether it is immunogenic, not immunogenic. Then he gets the data, and we lean over, and we try to understand and make sense of it.
Finally, we figured out how to make it non-inflammatory.
And then our mind was all over the place.
Just going in every direction, thinking a year in the future.
We just were amazed that, oh my God, this is what it means.
And after that is when the vaccine field and other RNA fields took off.
Coronavirus officially hitting the U.S.
Cases here in the U.S. have exploded. All-time highs today in many locations.
When we started this, we weren't thinking about curing pandemics. We were thinking about making new vaccines. We had 5 phase 1 clinical trials of different mRNA vaccines that we were working on before COVID-19 ever hit. And we knew at that time that this had the potential to be an incredible vaccine.
Moderna already tested influenza vaccine, which was mRNA vaccine, 2 years before. It was just the public didn't know about that.
One, two, three. You will not believe how happy I am. Yay!
Seeing the phenomenal success of vaccinated people being protected gives me incredible amounts of joy.
I was really happy when people wrote me emails and said that they could see their parents and family members. They could meet each other.
We haven't thought of all of the things you can do with mRNA. My family, and I'm sure my lab, is mad at me that I didn't celebrate when the phase 3 clinical trials came in. I had already moved on to something new. We were working on pan-coronavirus vaccines, sickle cell anemia gene therapy, malaria with people across the US and in Africa, leptospirosis with people in Southeast Asia, vaccines for peanut allergies. We're working on really every imaginable infectious disease.
I was always interested about this fragile molecule, this RNA, and still today I am following scientists discovering new things, and I am just fascinated, just like an exciting crime story, and I am so glad that it eventually helps humanity.
I never sit back and rest on laurels. I'm always moving forward. I'm always moving on to the next disease, the next vaccine, the next therapeutic, and that's just the way I think.
We worked together a lot,
Yeah.
and we had a lot of fun.
It was a lot of years, but they weren't boring years.
It was very enjoyable. To be a scientist is a joy.
De seguida, Sua Excelência, o Presidente da
Now,
República,
His
Marcelo
Excellency,
Rebelo de Sousa,
President of the
entregará os
Portuguese
diplomas
Republic
a
will
dois
give
dos autores da obra vencedora deste prémio.
awards to two of the authors of this BIAL Award in Biomedicine 2021.
Zika virus protection by a single low-dose nucleoside modified mRNA vaccination, publicado na revista
Published
Nature
in
de
the
fevereiro
Nature
de
Journal on
2017.
February
Professor Drew Weissman.
2017, Professor Drew Weissman.
Dr. Michael J.
Dr.
Hogan.
Michael J. Hogan.
Terá lugar agora a apresentação
Now,
da obra distinguida com BIAL
the work that won the BIAL Award by Biomedicine 2021 Now, the presentation of the paper that won the BIAL Award in Biomedicine 2021 made by its author, Professor Drew Wiseman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President of the Portuguese Republic, all the members of the government, the leaders of the Portuguese universities, and all ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for honoring us with this wonderful award. What I wanted to talk to you about is just give you a little background on the paper that we published and what it's done to the future of medicine and the future of research. So this is the manuscript, and I wanted to first start by just giving you a background on vaccines in general. The first vaccine that we know of was done in 1798 for the smallpox epidemic, and it's actually a very interesting story. Edward Jenner was a physician in England, and he noted that milkmaids who were working on cows that had similar-looking pox lesions were not getting smallpox. And he didn't understand this, but he had the idea that if he took the cowpox lesion and used that to inject people, they would be protected. And he was correct. That was the first vaccine for smallpox that protected people from that deadly epidemic. As you can see, many other vaccines were developed after that, and many different types of vaccines. So in each color is a different format of a vaccine. Live viruses, inactivated viruses, proteins, viral vectors, DNA, and RNA. This is the general thinking of somebody who makes vaccines. So the first step is you have to excite the immune system with the vaccine. The vaccine has to tell the immune system, this is foreign, you need to make a response against it. It does that in a number of ways. It makes proteins that activate other cells. It makes antibodies that can neutralize the pathogen or the virus. And it makes cell-mediated immunity that can protect tissues from the infection. I apologize for this overly complicated description, but what it really shows is how simple the mRNA vaccine is. You start with a piece of DNA. The DNA has the code for the antigen, in this case for COVID-19, the spike antigen, in the DNA. You take a single enzyme that copies the DNA and makes RNA. You take that RNA, you put it into a lipid nanoparticle, and you give it to a patient. The lipid nanoparticle is taken up by immune cells. The RNA is read, the code is read, which makes the spike protein that's then presented to the immune system to stimulate antibody and T cell responses. It was simple for us. So what the purpose of this manuscript and what we're continuing to do with it is that at the time, there were many vaccines where people had tried to, many diseases where people tried to make vaccines and they failed. The vaccines didn't work, they didn't protect people, some made people worse. And so with that, we used the modified RNA as a new approach to make better, safer, and easier vaccines. What the manuscript shows is that we could make a vaccine for Zika that a single immunization of both mice and macaques protected the animals from challenge. So if you think about worldwide pandemic treatment for Zika, that would have meant a single immunization likely would have protected people had the Zika pandemic continued. So I have to show the data from the paper because the paper is being honored. But what this shows, and what you want to note, is that the dots in black that are high up on the graphs are measures of antibody levels. And we can see very quickly after a single immunization, you have very high levels of antibody. The C and D show neutralization. So what that means, those antibodies can bind to the virus and stop it from infecting. That's the ideal scenario. On the bottom, we see the identical data from macaques that were immunized once. Again, within 2 weeks, we see high levels of antibody. Now, of course, the most important thing is, does the vaccine protect? So what this experiment shows are mice that were immunized once with mRNA LNPs for Zika, and then were challenged either 2 weeks or 20 weeks later. What we see here is that all of the lines at the bottom are the vaccinated animals. And what that means is they didn't replicate the virus. The virus did not grow. And the lines that are shooting up at 3 days, are the control animals that had high levels of viral replication. So these animals got the virus and would have gotten sick from it. Importantly, scientists will joke that everything works in mice, but nothing works in macaques and people. So we wanted to show that this vaccine also worked in macaques, in monkeys, non-human primates. We immunized macaques once with the Zika vaccine, and again challenged them with Zika virus. All of the animals completely recovered. We're actually still following them. They're having a wonderful life in our animal facility, enjoying their bananas and whatever else. But the data we got from these animals was that they were, again, completely protected with 1 dose of this vaccine. So the significances of this manuscript are many. This was the first paper that used nucleoside-modified mRNA lipid nanoparticle vaccines. This paper caught the attention of many biotech companies, Moderna, BioNTech, and others, and pharmaceutical companies who saw this platform as a great vaccine for pandemics and for fast production. The first 2 COVID-19 vaccines that were approved in the United States and Europe used this platform, used the exact platform that was described for the first time in this paper. These are also the 2 vaccines that the FDA approves for first-line use. I'd like to show this data. This is the phase 3 data from the Pfizer-BioNTech trial. And what it's doing is it's measuring infections in the 30,000 people that were followed. And what you can see is that in the placebo group, they keep going up. In the vaccinated people, by 12 days after the second dose, they're having no more infections, very rare infections. This is as beautiful an example of protection as you will ever see. So I always like to look to the future. And my lab is working on a lot of different RNA therapies, and we're working with many other labs. But for the RNA vaccine and its utility and facility, it's being used for an enormous number of diseases. Many of them have not been treatable with other vaccines, things like HIV, hepatitis C, herpes simplex virus, malaria, TB, and many others. We're also working on pan-coronavirus vaccines. What that means is there have been 3 coronavirus epidemics in the past 20 years. we have to assume there's going to be more. So we're working on a vaccine that will prevent any bat coronavirus from crossing over into humans. That way we'll be protected in the future the next time COVID-19 or SARS or MERS emerges. We're working on RNA vaccines for food and environmental allergies. So any parent here with a child allergic to peanuts knows the panic they have every time their child goes out of the house. We're working on a vaccine that will prevent peanut allergies. We're working on vaccines for cancer, for autoimmune diseases, and for many others. Beyond that, RNA is also very effective for therapeutics, for treatment of diseases. It can deliver monoclonal antibodies. It can replace congenitally absent proteins like the CFTR, which is the protein that's deficient in cystic fibrosis, and many others. The most exciting work that I feel so far is developing in vivo gene therapy. So what does that mean? Currently, we have a gene therapy protocol that's approved for sickle cell anemia. What you have to do is you take the patient, you stick needles in their bone marrow and take out large amounts of bone marrow, you infect it with a virus, and then you give it back to the patient. That's $1 million, maybe $2 million treatment per dose. 200,000 people a year are born with sickle cell in Africa and India and much of the rest of the world. That's an impossible treatment to do. What we've developed is a way of giving people a single injection of RNA LNPs that target the bone marrow stem cells, the cells that produce red blood cells, and deliver enzymes that can fix the genetic defect. So now we can go to Africa and India and elsewhere, give people an injection and cure their sickle cell anemia. And we're hoping to move this forward into clinical trials in the next year. So I need to thank all of the authors. I'm not the person who did all of this work. Actually, Mike Hogan in the back is the person who did this work with the help of all the other authors on this paper. And in addition to these authors are the thousands of other researchers who were before us and who are after us and are continuing this work and expanding it to new diseases and new approaches. Thank you very much.
Vai agora usar da palavra.
Now, His Excellency, the President of the Portuguese Republic, will take the floor.
Senhora Ministra da Saúde,
Madam Minister
Senhora
of Health,
Presidente da Câmara Municipal de Lisboa,
Mayor of
nossa anfitriã,
Lisbon, our host, Director of the University of Lisbon,
por sinal, minha universidade de origem,
my alma
sempre que eu
mater,
como Presidente da República,
and today,
sou de todas as
as
universidades
President of the
portuguesas.
Republic, I am of
Senhora
all
Presidente
Portuguese
da
universities,
Fundação BIAL,
President of the BIAL
nosso
Foundation,
anfitrião,
and another host,
Senhor Secretário de Estado,
Mr. Secretary of
Senhor
State,
Presidente do Grupo,
Mr. President of Group,
Senhores Bastonários, Presidente
Presidents of professional associations, President of the Parliamentary Committee, laureates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen.
já perceberam que eu vou afastar
You have understood that I am going to, I'm not going to read my paper. I was going up the stairs, and the president, one of our hosts, the president of the foundation, told me, today is the day to celebrate. I will start my speech saying that today is a day to celebrate, a party day. Well, I'd rather say celebration, party, whatever. Celebration in time and in space. Let's start with the space. The space where we are today,
uma universidade,
a university,
numa colaboração muito
in a very close cooperation between the BIAL Foundation and group and universities, we have the ideal venue for the awarding of this prize. And we have had this discussion with our peers in university. University is not just a place to convey knowledge. It is a place for research as well. It is not just a place for research. It's a place to convey knowledge. And it is this symbiosis extended to higher education as a whole, but specifically the university explains why this venue could not have been better chosen. But it's also a matter of space, because today it involves the BIAL Foundation and Portugal, the Portuguese universities, and so Portugal links Portugal to the world. This award is the world. The laureates are the world. And this means that BIAL Foundation and this award have fulfilled their mission, the mission to connect what is universal to the universe. Science is universal. Scientific awards are universal. And so, and therefore, this celebration of space, but also a celebration of time. The times we are going through in Portugal and throughout the universe. Almost the end of a long period of pandemic, where this universe was almost all but closed. People could not move. Institutions could not move. Well, they did. Ideas did move, but not so easily. Hope and trust in the future, about the future, moved, but also with certain difficulty. But now we are celebrating this moment of openness. And it is now that we celebrate this openness that we give this award to those that have allowed for this openness to be a reality. And those that allowed for that are the researchers, scientists, and then those that in the field, namely the healthcare workers, carry what science has built throughout the time. So it is a happy match between space and time. And even in one of the merits of this winning article, this winning paper, because what is most impressive about it is what is most impressive about science. Science doesn't have a schedule, but it's always urgent. We look at Professor Wiseman's picture 10 years ago, or 15 or 20 years ago. It looks like his son today. I don't know if...
Look at your picture before and afterwards, Professor. And that makes all the difference.
Science is a marathon. And this marathon lets us get to, otherwise we would not be able to get to. It's a marathon that presupposes genius, talent, team spirit, humbleness. I was impressed to confirm here in person what we had seen before in video, how humble Professor Drew Wiseman is. But genius, talent, the true genius is humble. You should distrust someone that is assumed to be a talent or a genius and is not humble, because probably is neither. But the fact is that this long path that allowed us to get to this result, and look at the purpose of that research, And what are the results of that research? The purpose was to open a path, to get to a platform. The first outcome that was not defined at the outset to find a specific path for the Zika pandemic. But then other outcomes, even less expected, to open that platform to what can be the solution for many other epidemics and other diseases, other pathologies. And then to the first COVID-19 vaccines. And when we wondered, when we asked ourselves, how is it possible to come so quickly to the first vaccines for a reality that was only months old? Well, one answer is this paper, because there was a pre-history of research on that, because there was a research that was ongoing and could have, as a result, among others, opening a specific path for a new reality that we didn't have in 2017 when the paper was first published. But we did have it in 2020 when there was this call to one among other results of this research. This is science at work. This is the serendipity of science. And when I found in that video the description how they started in research, started small. I remember the time when we took Xerox photocopies of textbooks. And then with those photocopies, we think that the work was almost ready. There was an illusion. The illusion that if the science was in our hands, that was the end of the road. But it was just the start of the road. Now, today we no longer need photocopies, but they were at the beginning of this path. It is quite impressive. This is a great honor to me as President of the Portuguese Republic be able to say that Portugal is hosting the award of this, the awarding of this prize, recognizing the universal merit, recognizing the importance of science. And when, every now and then, we find negationisms here and there, science saying that science is worthless or it's not very important, or some specific cases of application of science doesn't make sense, then we wonder, we are amazed when we compare that with what is the hard work of scientists. And a special word to some Portuguese scientists as well, that are also part of the juries of the BIAL Foundation, among the most qualified men and women scientists, but universal scientists. We owe them a lot. It is true that times are welcoming, because nothing like a pandemic to recognize the importance of science and to deny negationisms. But among negationisms, let me make a difference between the negationisms of principle and negationisms in practice. Negationisms in principle are maybe the less dangerous, because we can destroy them around the corner with the affirmation of science. But negationisms in practice are those that do not want to recognize the merit of science and don't want to invest in science, letting science go further in the resources available for science. Converting a bet in principle in a bet or an investment in resources and means. You may tell me it's impossible because they will never. So in certain societies, they will never meet their expectations. But these times are good for us to understand how our future goes through that. Our universal future, our European future. I mean, the mayor of Lisbon was a former commissioner, European commissioner in this area, so I'm sure he knows what I'm talking about, even though Lisbon is a fascinating city. But the truth is that this is very important for our future in the coming years, as a country. As a country. One of the most important things about qualification is science. Science is linked to ongoing training, but science is vital. So I will end congratulating Dr. Luís Portela, because this is a long-lasting work. He was right when he started with BIAL Foundation. He was right when he diversified the Foundation's awards and the other complementary activities. He was right when he went against certain zeitgeists that said that the foundations should be dedicated to other types of social responsibility. Now, who would replace this foundational activity in promoting science and supporting science? Who? He's still right by insisting and dreaming about a different future. And finally, well, I have a few words written to the winners.
And I try to be short. Dear Professor Drew Weissman, I would like to warmly congratulate you, you and your team, for the exceptional quality and relevance of your work. You know how it was so important, coming from a starting point that was humble, limited, to build a platform, and then having an outcome that meant so many results for pandemics. Not just the Zika pandemic, that was the first one, but then others and other pathologies for all the world. You spoke of people living in different continents, very different continents. How important it was, what you did, and you're doing. You don't stop. Humbly, always humbly. Here today, with this award, we celebrate science, research, study, resilience, belief, working together. That's so important, has been so important, because it's not just hard work, it is persistence, it is creativity. You may be humble, all of you, but your talent changed the world. Thank you for it. Muito obrigado.
Senhoras e senhores, muito obrigado.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your presence.
Obrigado pela vossa presença.
Thank you for your presence here and those that were watching in streaming of this ceremony of the BIAL Award in Biomedicine 2021. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you again, and have a nice weekend.